And so I got so depressed I couldn't even get out of bed. And I then started thinking, like, there's so much going on, there's so much wrong. This is bad. And she just said, "You're doing great. Keep dieting and exercising. You have a history of PCOS. You probably still have it." Pat me on the back, and then she walked out. And I was a little stunned, and I was also like enraged. Hi, my name is Letisha, and I live with Polycystic Ovary Syndrome, also known as PCOS. PCOS is something that I have struggled with a large portion of my life, and going through my journey with PCOS also inspired me to get involved in PCOS advocacy and also become a healthcare professional to help other people with PCOS as well. Yeah, so I wasn't diagnosed with PCOS until I was 23 years old. And at the time, I was really struggling with not having a menstrual cycle. That is something that I'd struggled with my entire life. And I also have always struggled with my weight, even though I grew up as an athlete. Had a history of disordered eating, and it just seemed I did nothing different than my peers, but I always presented in a larger body. And I was also experiencing cystic acne, like especially on the jawline. And so I went to a new gynecologist, and she happened to sit down and just listen to me explain everything from the time that my menses started up to that point. And she was like, "You know what? Like, you have something called polycystic ovary syndrome, or PCOS." And she did explain to me that it would be challenging to have children. And she told me that I had a couple of different options, which was work on losing weight, and I could take birth control if I wanted to, and then to come back whenever I was ready to get pregnant. And so I'm a licensed practical nurse. I was working in skilled nursing at the time. And honestly, I didn't even look into PCOS. A lot of people, especially now, they get diagnosed, they jump on Google, they jump on social media. I just took it as like, okay, I have this diagnosis. This is why my periods are really sporadic. This is why I've always struggled with my weight. And I didn't really do nothing else with it until we were talking about trying to conceive. And I just thought, okay, I got to go back. Like she said, come back whenever you want to get pregnant. And we talked about a couple of different options. And one of the options for me was metformin, which is an insulin sensitizing drug. It's a really common medication prescribed for people with PCOS. And I was pretty fortunate that it worked relatively quickly. I was able to ovulate, and we got pregnant. So I didn't actually dive into what my PCOS was until was around my 30s. So I feel like I really went, a greater part of a decade of just living with this condition that I didn't really know much about. And honestly, I was never given the feeling that I needed to know anything about it. Like, I didn't know that it was a condition that needed my attention. I didn't know it was something that I needed to manage. I had no clue that it was more than my weight and my periods at the time, until I hit my 30s and found myself probably at my worst health ever. And that's whenever I really started digging in to, like, okay, what is PCOS? What is going on? Why am I dealing with all of this? What can I do? And that was like the pivot moment in my life. It was around the age of 30. So, at the time, like, I was working as a nurse at the time when they first prescribed metformin to me, and they didn't explain how metformin works, and I was so confused because I was giving metformin to my patients every day that had diabetes, and I was just like, "This does not make sense to me. Like, why am I taking this medication?" And of course, now I had to educate myself, and I understand a lot of people with PCOS struggle with insulin resistance, but they may not be diabetic yet. There is an increased risk of that, but improving your insulin levels can help lower your testosterone that impacts your ovulation. And so, it worked for me, but at the time, I do recall, I've been on metformin 3 different parts of my life so far in my journey. That was the first time, and I did have a lot of, like, digestive side effects. So those are typically the most common. Like loose stools, bloating, gas, like the urgency. It seemed like as soon as you ate, you had to go to the bathroom, which was really challenging when you're working as a nurse. You don't have time to go to the bathroom all day. And I do recall at that point in time, I was only on it for a couple months, and I was almost to the point I was ready to give up on it because I was so miserable of like, I cannot get adjusted to this. And then I ended up pregnant. So I was like, "Oof," like at least it worked, because I don't know that I could have kept going. And I hear a lot of people really struggle with it. Something that I've just learned throughout my own journey and with working with people with PCOS, um, the third time that I tried it actually had no side effects at all, but I had already done a lot of work on like supporting my gut health before starting, and, like managing a lot of different things in my lifestyle that helped me tolerate it more. And I didn't have to go to some other options which are available, like doing extended release that might help with those side effects, or taking it at bedtime, so that way you're not eating and you're in that rest and digest mode. So that made it a little bit easier. So I think it just depends on the person, but for a lot of people, if you kind of support your body a little bit before, talk to your provider about getting an alternative if you're having, side effects, especially if they go for a long period of time. Like, those are really helpful, but not everybody knows that. Like, I didn't know that the first time I was on it, that I could ask for an extended release, or, that I really needed to do some things to kind of like help with my gut and, be careful, the way that I eat my meals and, things like that. And so it's really hard to know that you have options when no one's talking about the option. So at that point in time, it was definitely diet modifications. I was working with a registered dietitian, and we worked on, you know, foods that were triggering me at the time, increasing my fiber intake. I didn't do that overnight, but that's a huge one. It's actually, um, it does so many amazing things for PCOS. It's just fiber is not, I guess, a sexy thing to talk about. So and then honestly, one of the big kickers was managing my stress. So especially if we're always in fight or flight mode, then we're not in rest and digest mode. So managing my stress and really changing a lot of the ways that my lifestyle was helped me get into a better place with my gut health. I think the way that I manage my stress levels, I think it's probably best to have a little bit of context of like why I needed to manage my stress level. So, after I had my son that I needed a little bit of help, I have two sons. My first one was a surprise. The second one, we went to the doctor, got metformin, all of that. Um, After having my second son, I knew that I had PCOS, and I was really struggling with my weight. I was at my highest weight at that time, and since I've really struggled with my weight my whole life, I arrived at a place where I told myself, "You know what? You have this thing that's gonna impact your weight. You just need to find something that's going to be long term. Like, stop doing the quick fixes, stop doing the fads, the gimmicks, all the, like, we've just got to figure out a way to make this like an actual lifestyle change." And so I really set off. Honestly, at that time, it was a weight loss journey. And over time, it took me a couple of years. I lost 100 pounds and started weightlifting. I got involved in bodybuilding and competed as a figure competitor. And I did everything that I believed was what I was supposed to do. I thought I beat PCOS because it's supposed to be so hard to lose weight, which it is. It is challenging. And all this time, my doctors told me to lose weight. I was listening to my personal trainers and, the fitness community. I was doing all of the things, the dieting, the exercising, the, strenuous training. I was, pushing myself to the limit. So realistically, I dieted and exercised straight for like 5 years. After I competed and my body got to its lowest, fat mass, it got to its lowest, I got to my lowest weight and probably my most fit physique. And I was trying to adjust to like eating normally again. My body, for a lack of better words, just fell apart. My hair started falling out in chunks. My whole body was inflamed and ached, and it was sore, and I was puffy and swollen. My digestion pretty much stopped. I was having to use enemas just to go to the bathroom. I like everything I ate felt like it was giving me a allergic reaction. I lost all of my strength. I went from this like really strong, confident woman in the gym to I can't even go to the gym anymore because I'm so weak. And then eventually it just felt like everything I worked for all those years just got ripped away from me. And so I got so depressed I couldn't even get out of bed. And I then started thinking, like, there's so much going on. There's so much wrong. This is bad. Like, there's something scary wrong with me. So I did what you do. I went back to my doctor and I said, hey, like, I don't know if it's my hormones. I don't know if if I need to go to a different kind of doctor. Like, something is really wrong. I have this laundry list of symptoms that I need help and I don't know how to fix it. And she just said, you're doing great. Keep dieting and exercising. You have a history of PCOS. You probably still have it. Pat me on the back. And then she walked out. And I was a little stunned, and I was also like enraged, for lack of better words. Like, I just cried in my car, and I went down this pipeline that a lot of people do when you lose a lot of weight and you get involved in the fitness industry. People come to you wanting help. So I was already kind of transitioning from I want to leave nursing to become a fitness and health coach. And so I did that, ended up leaving nursing, opened my own health coaching business. And I'm at this time like trying to figure out how to heal myself because the medical community was not helping me. And I'm like, I'm going to have to figure this PCOS thing out. Like, that was a moment. Now I'm in my 30s. There's something to this. Like, there's more to this. And I started diving into the research. I started getting involved in nonprofit organizations and started networking with PCOS professionals, PCOS advocates. I started working almost exclusively with people with PCOS. So I was, gathering like case study after case study. And that's when like my whole world like exploded because I realized like PCOS is so much more than our ovaries. And there's so much that's not discovered yet, but there is a lot of things that we do know about it and a lot of things that we can do. And I realized that even though I was following what my doctor said, my fitness instructors were saying, and what the medical, the fitness, the diet industry, I was doing all of those things. It was not the healthiest thing for me and my body and my PCOS. You can't diet for 5 years straight. Like, you eventually have got to come out of a caloric deficit. And training the way that I wasn't allowing my body to rest. I wasn't allowing myself to recover because you get into that mindset of like, you go big or go home, you grind, you hustle every day, like all of that. And I just realized like I was underfeeding my body, undernourishing my body. Yes, I was moving it, but I wasn't really moving it in a healthy way. And there was also some components that I never considered, which are like past trauma that I never addressed, which really made a big difference. Really kept me in fight or flight mode, which really exacerbated my PCOS. And so I mean, you can imagine there for a few years, it was just like I opened this Pandora's box. And as I'm doing this, I'm also simultaneously seeing other people going through the same thing. And it kind of, there for a moment, I got really discouraged and was like, why is nobody doing anything for us? Why is nobody helping us? Like, all of us were so, like, the messaging is conflicting. We're sick. Nobody's listening to us. And it kind of dawned on me. I was like, you know what? I can do something. I can become someone that helps the community, helps people like me. And so I was really inspired by a lot of PCOS dietitians, and actually went to an event, I think it was the end of 2019, and I met a lot of the PCOS dietitians and saw how like important they were. And I came back and told my husband, I think I'm going to become a dietitian. So now here I am a few years later with a bachelor's degree, and I'm going into my dietetic internship and the graduate program to become a dietitian. But it took that process to realize that I really went into the trenches of like the diet and fitness industry thinking I was doing the best thing for my body. I was listening to all the messages that I was given, and I became very sick at the end of it all, and nobody really talks about that. And there's a lot of shame wrapped up in that too, because when I did try to come out and talk about my experience, one, people always pointed their finger towards the bodybuilding industry, and I'm like, no, like the bodybuilding aspect of it was kind of like the cherry on top kind of thing. It kind of like pushed me over the edge. But I'm like, that's the first thing you're told when you have PCOS is lose weight. That's all anybody tells you to do. And then you get stuck into these restrictive diets and these extensive exercise programs and so on. Nobody really talks about how important sleep is, how important managing your stress is, how important, rest and recovery is. There was just a lot of like missing aspects to things that really benefit our PCOS, and how much we need to be nourished too. So there's just a lot of things that I had to really go through the trenches of to realize, hey, that's actually not the best approach. I was having a reaction to like everything, and so it was just really hard. And I remember there was a time frame where I was eating, chicken and vegetables and rice, and within the gym still 2 hours a day, and I was like gaining weight. I was getting weaker and weaker. And what was crazy is I was losing my muscle mass. Like, so all the muscle that I'd been working on, my body was to the point where it was like, we're going to eat away your muscle, and then we're going to like flip the composition, and now you're going to have more fat mass. And whenever I started noticing that this was not normal, I can put up photos of myself at the same weight before competition and after competition, and they were drastically different, even though I was the same weight, like drastically different. So it was just really challenging, and I didn't have professionals in my life that understood PCOS. I didn't have professionals in my life that could walk me through like my hormones and what labs I need to look at and how to manage that. That was, I really went into that blindly. And I think that's another reason why like it's hard to talk about, because if you share these things, you get blamed. Well, it's your fault for going into bodybuilding. Or it's your fault for restrictive dieting. It's your fault for not looking at your hormones. Like, no matter what you do, it's your fault. And it's like I was simply doing what I was being told to do and all that I knew to do at the time. I was following the messaging that we are given as a PCOS community, which is just constantly restrict, and move more and move more. And no one talks about the repercussions of that in the long term. I knew intellectually at that time I'd already lost 100 pounds, and I had, dieted to the limit. And I was just so enraged is the only word I know. Like, I really trusted this provider. I loved her because she was the one who initially diagnosed me with PCOS, and I trusted her because during the appointment when she diagnosed me, she listened to me talk about, from my menses up to that point, and I felt like she was compassionate. She was amazing with my birth of my second son. And then, so I think I felt betrayed too, because I really felt like I could trust this provider, and she was an advocate for me whenever I was going through my labor and delivery. And now I'm coming to her at my worst health in tears, knowing that something's really wrong. And I just get a pat on the back and like, hey, just keep dieting and exercising. And it's like, you don't understand. A couple months ago, I was on stage as a bodybuilder. I like, what do you want me to do? I can't diet and exercise my way out of it. So there was definitely some enrage, betrayal, and then, I think another part of me was really sad because I thought, I'm an educated woman, I'm a nurse, I've worked in the healthcare field. If she's saying that to me, what what are other people gonna have? What hope do they have? What hope do I thought at that time I really understood nutrition and fitness and health. So if you're saying that to me, I can't imagine someone that doesn't have my experience or my skills or that doesn't work in a healthcare field. What are what are they gonna do when they get treated that way? So it was really hard. But I look back and I mean, it led me to where I'm at today. So, I mean, like it was such I think about that experience all the time, maybe even daily now that we're talking about it. And how much that one appointment changed my life forever. Like, on the same side of that, um, I've worked as a nurse, I was involved in healthcare, I still felt that fear of speaking up at my doctor's appointments and, like, advocating for myself, and so that was another thing of, like, if I'm scared to ask these questions or stand up for myself, I can't imagine someone that, is not in my shoes, like, they have to be afraid too, and, um throughout my healing process, I was getting more involved in organizations with PCOS, and I went to a symposium. And then one of the speakers said something that changed my viewpoint forever. And she said, actually, it's okay for you to educate your doctor if they don't understand PCOS. And, advocate for yourself because at the end of the day, you are your best advocate. So if you're going to a doctor that, like, oh, we have PCOS, I don't really know what to tell you, just Google it. It's okay to use your voice, even if it shakes, and say, this is what PCOS is. This is what you need to do to learn more about it so that you can help people like me. And that really changed my perspective of how to approach PCOS advocacy, healthcare professionals, how to encourage other people to stand up. Because I think a lot of times we have this idea that the doctors know everything and they know like what is always best, and they're creatures of habit just like we are, and so like they tend to have expertise in what they do constantly. So if PCOS is not in their expertise, they may not know, and it's okay to educate them on that, or let them know, hey, you need to get more educated on this because I need help. My PCOS symptoms and like where I'm at with my PCOS has changed throughout my lifespan. And I think a lot of people don't realize PCOS is lifelong. So we will have it even after menopause. And there's so many aspects to PCOS that what you're focusing on now with your PCOS may look different in 5 years or next year or whatever. So, over the last couple of years, while I've been an undergrad, because I live in such a rural area, I was commuting 4 hours round trip every day just to get to class on top of, 6 to 8 hours of sitting in class. Plus, I have kids. I really went through 2 years of preparing meals at home and getting to the gym are not always feasible. So even though we may know the things that we need to do for our health or our PCOS, having the capacity to do it is a different story. So when it came to my symptoms, I was really happy that for the most part I was able to manage um regular periods, even though I did notice during the higher stress I would lose it for a couple months and then I could get it back. So one stress level like really high, like maybe like around midterms or possibly like the end of a semester, I would lose it for a month or two and get it back. But considering I used to go over a year without a period, I was like, hey, considering my circumstances, I feel like I've done a great job of maintaining a period as much as possible. My hair was not falling out, which was great. I wasn't dealing with cystic acne, which is great. I was just doing my best. The only symptom that was really related to my PCOS that I struggled with is I'm definitely gained weight in these last 2 years. I was sitting a lot, relied on convenient foods a lot more than I had to in the past. And so the weight came on, but I'm in a spot in my journey where I understood why. And so, yeah, like I definitely have tried a few things. I have worked in conventional medicine, and I work for a functional health coaching company. So I've definitely have been trained and worked in the functional space. And my personal values and the way I approach health is I like to be somewhere in the middle. And metformin I have been on. Birth control here and there. I wasn't very consistent with birth control, so that was a hard one for me to stay on. And then spironolactone is an anti-androgen medication that helps reduces androgens. So that is one that I have tried over the years. And then I've also have tried some of the GLP-1 medications, and I have kind of personal mixed testimony on those. So for some reason, I had a really, really hard time with like nausea and vomiting on Wegovy compared to the compounded. Again, that's anecdotal. That was just me. I definitely noticed more delayed like gastric emptying in that situation. There was definitely a lot of extra fullness. I wasn't able to eat. I would have I could go really long periods without eating. I have ADHD too, and so I think that was really hard for me. I knew intellectually it's not good for me to go long periods without eating. So it was like I would have to eat a good breakfast, then take my medicine, just because I knew if I wasn't forcing myself to eat, I would be so undernourished. And a lot of people don't pay attention to that. No. But unfortunately, even though I wasn't eating as much, I didn't lose weight on Wegovy, and my insurance dropped it. They said, "Oh, like you're not losing weight," and I'm like, "Well, but like I am having a regular period. Like my hair is not falling out. Like obviously, it's helping with a lot of my PCOS symptoms, minus the weight. Like I'm sedentary. I don't know what to do about that. Like I'm trying, but I can't change the fact that I'm driving 16 hours a week to school, and then I'm sitting in class all day, and then I'm also working on assignments at my desk at night." But anyway, so they dropped it, and I came off of it, and no, I didn't really have any rebound after that. So I guess that's a good thing. Like I was able to manage everything else on my own. There are some supplements that I also take, like inositol and vitamin D, omega-3 fatty acid, like fish oil, and things like that as well. Yeah, yeah. So, a lot of times, like my provider, particularly, every provider is different, but every 3 months, obviously, we looked at my um, hemoglobin A1C, which is like an average of your blood sugar over the past 3 months. So, we would look at my fasting insulin and my fasting glucose levels, but we would also look at like pancreatic enzymes as well. I know some people who have like a history, or maybe a family history of thyroid issues. You probably want to get your thyroid panels done. So it depends on the person, depends on the provider, but it's not something that I would just take without having someone monitoring us. At the end of the day, you are your best advocate, and like doing your best to understand and learn and speak up and ask for things that you need. So, like asking for that lab work if your provider is not already doing it. Those can be some helpful things just to make sure that you're not at risk for anything. I think it's really important, regardless of where you're at on your PCOS journey, is knowing that how you feel is so valid, and what you're experiencing is really important, and you deserve the attention and compassion and understanding of what you're going through. And I think that a lot of people don't realize like you're doing the best that you can to manage a condition that even the leading experts in this world haven't figured out yet. So maybe we need to, sometimes we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, and it's like you are doing your best. If you could do better, you would have done it already. Like you're doing all that you can, and I don't think enough people hear that.